off-grid living for mere mortals, even if it's not quite legal.
Good evening. Welcome to another edition of Offgrid Outlaw. This evening, I thought I'd try something a little different. Talking about some cultural icons from the early 1960s television era. There was a TV program that I found very fascinating back during that era. It was called The Outer Limits. Some of you may be familiar with it. I know there was a remake in more recent years, but I'm talking about the original series that ran from 1963 to, I think, early 1965. There were a lot of interesting parallelisms to modern culture that seem suspiciously to have been drawn from this series. We also have some documented evidence that some plagiarism had occurred in later movie productions. For instance, the author of the episode Soldier, which I believe was from the second season of The Outer Limits, was written by author Harlan Ellison. And in the 1980s, when the Terminator movie came out, there was a lawsuit, and the result was that Harlan Ellison got a credit for some of the plot ideas in the Terminator. There are some other interesting examples as well. We have a lot of music videos and music artists who used sampling of the quote-unquote control voice. You know, we will control the vertical, we will control the horizontal, in some of their music video intros. According to my research, Public Enemy, Van Halen, Guns N' Roses, to name a few, that have sampled that opening from The Outer Limits and used it in their videos. I myself made a couple of observations, and these aren't based in any verifiable fact, but they do have some very curious parallelisms. The episode Soldier featured a character 1,000 years in the future who ends up back in 1963 or so, and he's wearing this device that looks like a wristwatch, but it has some very distinct symbols on it. And one of them is a stylized R with a circle around it. And years later, Radio Shack came out with a logo, and this was probably the last Radio Shack logo before the company went belly up. But they had a stylized R inside of a circle. Makes you kind of wonder. Another example that struck me was an episode called Behold Eck. Now, Eck was a two-dimensional character that somehow wound up in the three-dimensional world and needed an optical physicist to create him a lens to allow him to go back to his dimension. You know, strange story, but nevertheless, you know, that is Eck. Anyway, 2 years later, the Church of Eckankar was formed, and many of its followers shortened the name of the church to just simply Eck. And there's another situation there where it kind of makes you wonder where they got the name from. But nevertheless, some interesting iconery there that may or may not have originated from the Outer Limits. If you've never seen the TV show, it's one of the more interesting experiences that made early television actually interesting, and it was related to a lot of thinking about things in less than conventional ways, using a lot of alien technology as protagonists in the story. But again, the authors often had the attitude that humans bad, aliens virtuous, and the hero human in the story tries to save the alien from the bad humans, the society, the police, the people at large who are afraid of aliens and therefore must treat the aliens with violence. So it's a very interesting treatise on the state of humanity, as well as a bunch of other interesting aspects as a science fiction. A lot of people used to compare The Outer Limits to another TV show from that era. But The Outer Limits was more of a science fiction. The Rod Serling thing was more of a philosophical look at how human perceptions can often be inverted. But anyway, I wanted to share with you some of my thoughts on that and make this a little bit of a lighter episode rather than get into too much heavy and depressing politics. Good TV series, a lot of interesting ideas, and I think if you can find an old copy of the video, or maybe it's available on DVD, it's definitely something worth watching. I think they had 30 some odd episodes in season 1, and I think there were about 17 in season 2. And definitely a different kind of TV series, more cerebral, very different than what we have today. Shot in a very simple black and white film noir kind of minimalistic kind of presentation, where the ideas were central to the whole production rather than special effects, which they had a very limited budget, so the special effects were kind of cheesy. But hey, back in 1963, it was pretty darn cool because there was nothing else like it before that. It broke new ground. Anyway, that's all I have to say about that for today. I will return to my normally scheduled programming in the next episode of Offgrid Outlaw. Until then, wishing you all a happy, safe evening, and see you next time.